Hello, I'm Bakhtiar Sanova and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Former Ukrainian minister arrested while attempting to leave the country. Iran ready to compromise on nuclear deal ahead of talks with United States on Tuesday in Geneva. And Board of Peace to unveil $5 billion in Gaza reconstruction at inaugural meeting. Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau says it has arrested former Energy Minister German Galushenko as he attempted to cross the country's border. The organization says the arrest was carried out as part of the so-called Midas case. While the agency did not name him directly, Galushenko resigned in November following a major corruption scandal in the energy sector. Prosecutors claim he helped manage illicit financial flows to an alleged $100 million money laundering scheme. He previously said he would defend himself against the accusations. Ukrainian, Russian and American delegations are due to meet in Geneva on Tuesday and Wednesday. Talks come as U.S. President Donald Trump seeks to push through a deal to end Europe's biggest war since 1945.
The United States, Ukraine and Russia are set to meet in Geneva on Tuesday for talks aimed at ending Russia's war in Ukraine. The two-day discussions follow two earlier rounds of trilateral talks held in Abu Dhabi in January and at the start of this month. Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will represent the United States, while the Kremlin said aide Vladimir Medinsky will lead the Russian delegation. Medinsky, who headed Russia's team during previous negotiations in Turkey in 2022 and again last year, is returning to the role. It's a move that could indicate Moscow expects discussions to expand beyond security concerns to wider areas of dispute. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian delegation will be led by Rustem Umerov, head of the National Security and Defense Council. The announcement comes as President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed hope that US-brokered peace efforts would be serious and substantive, while warning that Ukraine was too often being asked to make concessions. He called on Ukraine's allies to take stronger action, including imposing additional sanctions on Russia and maintaining weapons supplies to ensure Moscow engages meaningfully in negotiations. Nearly 4 years into the conflict, and despite sustained efforts by US President Donald Trump to end what he has described as a senseless bloodbath, the two sides remain divided on key issues, including territorial control. Zelensky has rejected proposals involving the exchange of Ukrainian territory as part of any settlement, saying such a move would affect the livelihoods of around 200,000 people living in the areas concerned. The latest talks mark a continued diplomatic push to de-escalate Europe's deadliest conflict since the Second World War.
Russia says its forces have made fresh gains in the southern part of the country, claiming advances in the Zaporizhia region. It comes as diplomatic efforts to end the war resume this week in Geneva, while Kiev questions Russia's intentions ahead of continued US-brokered talks.
Russia's defense ministry said on Sunday that its forces had taken control of the village of Tsvitkove in Ukraine's southeastern Zaporizhia region. Moscow currently controls around 75% of the Zaporizhia region, though battle lines have remained largely static since 2022 until what Russia describes as recent advances.
The East Force Group is advancing in the eastern part of the Zaporizhia region. In an attempt to halt our advance, the enemy command has redeployed its most trained assault units from other areas to this sector. The group's units are confidently repelling enemy attacks. Enemy units are suffering significant losses. In February, the settlements of Starokranka, Pridorozhnoye, Zaliznichnoye and Tsvetkovo came under our control.
Meanwhile, diplomatic negotiations on Ukraine are set to resume in Geneva on Tuesday. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky will lead the Russian delegation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he hopes the talks will be meaningful, but voiced concern that Kyiv is being asked to make too many concessions. He also accused Moscow of attempting to delay progress by changing its lead negotiator. The Geneva meetings will bring together Ukrainian, Russian and American delegations as US President Donald Trump intensifies efforts to broker an end to Europe's largest conflict since the Second World War. The talks follow two earlier rounds in Abu Dhabi.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has begun a visit to Central Europe, promising stronger engagement with Slovakia and Hungary. The trip comes as Washington looks to deepen defense and energy cooperation in the region.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has pledged to strengthen ties with Central Europe as he began a regional visit to Slovakia and Hungary. The two countries led by conservative governments already maintain warm relations with President Donald Trump. Rubio met Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico and President Peter Pellegrini in Bratislava on Sunday, marking the first visit by a US Secretary of State to the country in 7 years. Talks focused on energy security, defense cooperation and NATO coordination. Rubio said the Trump administration intends to place greater emphasis on engagement with Central Europe. For Slovakia, cooperation with Washington centers heavily on energy and defense.
We want to work with Europe. We want to work with our allies. We want to work in cooperation with you. And our point has been and continues to be, the stronger you are, both on an individual basis in terms of countries and collectively as an alliance, the stronger the members of NATO are, the stronger NATO is. And under President Trump, this administration is going to make not just Slovakia, but Central Europe a key component of how we engage the continent and the world.
Prime Minister Robert Fico outlined Bratislava's interest in expanding nuclear capacity with US support.
As for cooperation in the field of nuclear energy, I informed the Minister of Foreign Affairs where we are very interested, under the leadership of the American partner, to create a multinational consortium that would guarantee that Slovakia could build another nuclear unit with a capacity of 1,200 megawatts by the year 2040. And we look forward to signing specific agreements with Westinghouse in the course of the next year.
Fico also highlighted plans to expand Slovakia's Air Force fleet amid ongoing regional security concerns.
Military cooperation will continue on the border in the eastern part of the Slovak Republic. You know that we have purchased F-16 aircraft from the United States. There is an interest in increasing this number to 18. So we're discussing how to get another 4 aircraft into the Slovak fleet, because it is not a great sign of sovereignty when our airspace is being protected today by fighters from Poland, Hungary and the Czech Republic.
After visiting Slovakia, Rubio arrived in Budapest and met Hungary's Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó. Later, he will meet Prime Minister Viktor Orbán ahead of national elections in April as Washington seeks to reinforce strategic ties across the region.
High-stakes diplomacy between the United States and Iran is entering a critical phase, with deep divisions still clear on both sides. Indirect talks are set for Tuesday in Geneva as military pressure and political demands add urgency to the negotiations.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Geneva on Sunday for a second round of indirect talks with the United States, as both sides set out sharply different expectations for a possible deal. Araghchi is leading what Iran described as a diplomatic and specialized delegation. He is expected to meet Swiss and Omani foreign ministers and the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. On the US side, President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff will lead the delegation, according to media reports. The meeting follows a first round held in Muscat, Oman, in early February. Both sides called it a good start, but no concrete breakthrough was announced. Ahead of the Geneva talks, Iranian officials signalled conditional openness but also firm positions. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghei stressed that as a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Iran has the right to use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Signals from Washington are mixed. US's Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Trump prefers diplomacy and a negotiated settlement.
We're dealing with radical Shia clerics. Okay, we're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling. I think they're traveling right now to have important meetings, and we'll see how that turns out.
However, US media said Trump told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in December that he would back Israeli strikes on Iran's missile program if talks fail. Netanyahu has set strict conditions. He said any deal must remove nuclear material, halt uranium enrichment, and limit ballistic missiles. He also repeated his skepticism about reaching any agreement. Meanwhile, images released on Sunday showed the US Air Seal Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group sailing with aircraft flying in formation. 2 US officials told Reuters the military is preparing for the possibility of sustained, weeks-long operations against Iran if President Trump orders an attack.
At least 11 Palestinians were killed on Sunday in Israeli strikes on Gaza. The Palestinian Red Crescent said a strike on a tent encampment in northern Gaza left at least 6 people dead, while a separate strike in the south of the Strip killed 5. The incident marks the latest reported breach of a US-brokered ceasefire that took effect in October last year, with both Israel and Hamas accusing each other of near-daily violations. The Board of Peace created by U.S. President Donald Trump is due to meet this Thursday to discuss rebuilding Gaza. According to Trump, more than $5 billion has already been pledged for reconstruction and humanitarian efforts for the Strip.
States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Officials from more than 20 countries of the Board of Peace will come together in Washington, D.C. on Thursday for the first official meeting. Announcing on his own platform, Truth Social, President Donald Trump said that member states have pledged $5 billion towards humanitarian and reconstruction of war-torn Gaza. Trump also said that countries have already committed thousands of personnel to the International Stabilization Force and local police. He says that Hamas must uphold its commitment to full and immediate demilitarization, while regional Middle East powers including Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Saudi Arabia and Israel, as well as emerging nations such as Indonesia, have joined the board. Global powers and traditional Western US allies have been more cautious. However, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni announced on Sunday that Italy will join the board as an observer. The board is part of the Trump administration's plan to end the war between Israel and Hamas in the Strip. Both sides agreed to the plan last year, with a ceasefire officially taking effect in October. It was officially created and endorsed by the United Nations Security Council in November 2025 for a 2-year period. However, both Israel and Hamas have accused each other repeatedly of violating the ceasefire.
More than 30,000 properties were left without power, and flights faced widespread disruption after severe storms struck parts of New Zealand. Authorities say strong winds, fallen trees and flooding remain the main challenges as emergency crews continue response operations.
Severe storms battered New Zealand on Monday, disrupting flights, cutting power to tens of thousands and forcing evacuations across the North Island. Strong winds and heavy rain brought down trees and power lines, leaving more than 30,000 properties without electricity, including around 10,000 in Wellington. Several roads were closed as flooding damaged homes and washed away sections of infrastructure. The Manawatu-Wanganui region was placed under a state of emergency, while evacuations were ordered in parts of Masterton due to unstable trees. Emergency services warned that falling trees remain the most serious risk.
Looked like there was sort of dust and all that coming up the hallway, but it was still a bit dark. And the door was shut, and I thought, oh, that's good. It wasn't a tree through the house, the door's shut, that's what I saw. But I opened the door and that's what happened. A tree had come through the house.
Flights in and out of Wellington were largely cancelled or delayed, with Air New Zealand suspending operations at several airports due to severe winds. The airline said services would resume once conditions improve. Authorities are urging residents to stay off the roads, warning further disruption as the storm system moves south.
Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival, falls on February 17th this year. Celebrated in China and by Chinese communities around the world, the holiday is associated with family gatherings. As hundreds of millions travel home for the holiday, this year's Spring Festival travel rush is once again breaking records.
Hundreds of millions of people crisscross China during Lunar New Year holidays each year to reunite with families in their hometowns, making it the world's largest annual human migration. Official estimates predict a staggering 9.5 billion inter-regional passenger trips over the 40-day period, which runs until March 13th. As with every year, the 2026 travel rush stands as a spectacle of logistics. Officials project that self-driving will remain the dominant mode of transport, accounting for roughly 80% of all trips. Meanwhile, rail and civil aviation are expected to reach historic peaks, with passenger trips hitting 540 million and 95 million respectively. China is also using AI technology to reduce crowd congestion and assist staff in preparation for the Spring Festival. As large crowds of passengers filled the station, police robots were deployed at Guangzhou South Railway Station, one of the peak times for travel in China. Preparations for the Lunar New Year are also stealing the spotlight in Indonesia and Malaysia. In Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, residents crowded the Glodok Pangkaran street market on Sunday as excitement built ahead of the upcoming Chinese New Year celebrations. Many people visited the market, one of the city's well-known shopping spots, to purchase traditional decorations, red lanterns, festive ornaments, and food items associated with the holiday. In Malaysia's capital, Kuala Lumpur, similar traditions are drawing attention. In Chinatown, colourful inflatable horse lantern puppets paraded through the streets, accompanied by the rhythmic sounds of drums and gongs, ushering in the Lunar New Year festivities.
Now we'll take a break. Right after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Millions of Afghans are facing another year with urgent unfulfilled humanitarian needs, according to the United Nations. A new assessment from UN Habitat has highlighted the scale of the country's shelter crisis, while UNICEF has warned that nearly half of the population required aid last year. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
The United Nations Human Settlements Programme, or UN Habitat, says 4.2 million people in Afghanistan are in urgent need of shelter and non-food items this year. The agency shared the figure on its official X account, stressing that adequate housing is the first step toward a stable future, and warning that action to address the crisis cannot be delayed. UN Habitat said proper shelter is essential for stability and called for swift intervention to support vulnerable families. The warning comes as humanitarian needs across the country remain widespread. In its 2025 annual report, the United Nations Children's Fund said 22.9 million people in Afghanistan, nearly half of the population, required humanitarian assistance, including around 12 million children. UNICEF identified climate shocks, economic recession and unemployment, as well as the continued exclusion of women and girls from education and much of the workforce as the main drivers of those needs. Aid agencies have repeatedly warned that declining international funding, combined with economic hardship and climate pressures, is leaving millions of Afghans without basic services, shelter, or food security. With winter conditions, large-scale returns from neighboring countries, and continued funding gaps, humanitarian organizations say the need for shelter and essential support is likely to remain high in the months ahead. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Azerbaijan and Serbia have taken their partnership to a new level with energy cooperation at the heart of their growing alliance. The two leaders signaled long-term plans that could reshape regional power supply and strengthen their strategic ties. Here is more.
A few minutes ago here, presidents of Azerbaijan and Serbia delivered their remarks to the representatives of the press. Well, vital strategic partnership between these two countries have been underway for some considerable time, in fact for the past 13 years. And today marks an incredibly important milestone. The very first meeting of the Council of the Strategic Partnership between these two countries has taken place. We were there for the first few minutes of that very meeting. President Aliyev and President Vučić delivered their remarks, and there was a stage wherein the press representatives were not present. After that very meeting, a number of documents signed, in fact 7 documents related to economic cooperation, media, and also, of course, food security and many other areas related to that strategic core of the bilateral interaction between these two countries.
Serbian leader Vučić said the country is entering to the new era of electricity and it needs many energy sources. He added that the Serbian gas company and the state oil company of Azerbaijan held talks on this issue and a cooperation agreement was signed.
The construction will take more than 2 years. We believe that we will open a gas-fired power plant by 2029. 3 sites have been selected around the city of Nice. We are talking about clean energy. The European Union also recognizes this. In short, the construction is expected to take place in Tripale, Krusti or Nishka Banja. However, I think Krusti is the most suitable place. The plant will have a power generation capacity of 500 megawatts. President Ilham Aliyev has promised me that he would personally deal with this issue. You may not believe it, but in 2 years they managed to create a total power generation capacity of 1,890 megawatts.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, in his turn, emphasized that the process of creating this power plant is based on the investment opportunities that exist in Serbia. Aliyev called the investment climate in Serbia positive.
Bir müddet bundan evvel biz Serbiya təbii qazın ixracatına başlamışıq.
Some time ago, we started exporting natural gas to Serbia, and today we decided to increase the volume of our exports. Now, Serbia will also convert the gas to be exported into electricity, thereby acquiring clean electricity. This will create opportunities for both the Serbian market and for future exports. Today, Azerbaijan's export potential in the energy sector is 2 gigawatts. This figure will only increase because we are now engaged in the construction of many renewable energy plants and are ready to cooperate with Serbia in this area. We will generate an additional 8 gigawatts of energy capacity by 2032, and a large part of it will be exported. To achieve this, we need new and larger transmission capacities because our main export destination is Europe.
8 gigawatt enerji gücünü elde edeceğiz.
Azerbaijani leader marked that in general, bilateral relations with Serbia in the energy sector are now developing in a diversified manner.
Georgia's economy has grown by an average of 9.3% between 2021 and 2025, making it the leader in Europe. That's according to Economy Minister Mariam Kvivishvili. The minister cited data from the International Monetary Fund projecting Georgia will maintain the highest economic growth through 2030, averaging 5.1%. 2025 marked record results, exports up 11%. $4.7 billion in tourism revenue and historic passenger numbers across all 3 international airports. Turkey has dispatched its deep-sea drill ship Chagri Bey to Somalia for its first overseas drilling mission, marking that Energy and Natural Resources Minister Alparslan Bayraktar described as a historic step in the country's offshore energy expansion. Speaking in Mersin, Bayraktar said Chagri Bey will reach Mogadishu within 45 days and begin drilling at the Kurad-1 well in April. The mission follows 2024 energy agreements with Somalia, covering offshore and onshore exploration after Oruç Reis completed seismic surveys in 3 offshore blocks. With Chagri Bey and Yildirim, Turkey now operates 6 drill ships, and together with seismic vessels Oruç Reis and Barbaros Hayrettin Pasha holds the world's 4th largest offshore exploration fleet. Bayraktar said Turkey has also signed exploration deals this year with ExxonMobil, Chevron and BP, with another partnership due next week. He reiterated a target of 500,000 barrels per day by 2028, rising to 1 million in longer term. Turkey has stepped up higher-level security and diplomatic engagement as regional tensions continue to shape the agenda. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met Iraq's defense minister in Ankara, while Turkey's intelligence chief held a series of meetings on the sidelines of a major security conference in Munich.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan on Sunday held closed-door talks in Ankara with Iraqi Defense Minister Thabit Abbasi as Turkey and Iraq continue efforts to strengthen security coordination. Details of the meeting were not made public, but the talks took place against the backdrop of ongoing regional security concerns and cross-border challenges. Diplomatic engagement also continued in Europe. Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein met the head of Turkey's national intelligence organization, Ibrahim Kalin, in Munich, where global leaders gathered over the weekend for a major security conference. According to Iraq's foreign ministry, Hussein and Kalin discussed ways of enhancing cooperation between their 2 countries and reviewed developments across the Middle East. Talks also focused on the latest situation pertaining to a fragile ceasefire agreement that was recently signed between the Syrian government and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The Turkish intelligence chief also held a series of meetings with his foreign counterparts on the sidelines of the Munich conference. According to security sources, those discussions covered a wide range of bilateral and regional issues, including Iran, Gaza, Syria, and developments in North Africa. Talks also reportedly tackled joint counterterrorism efforts, irregular migration, and cybersecurity. Over the weekend, Germany hosted the 62nd Munich Security Conference, where diplomats from around the world described the current global climate as the most turbulent since the end of the Cold War. This is Adam Mara for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov has dismissed the ministers of emergency situations, transport and communications, and natural resources, ecology and technical supervision. The reasons for the dismissals were not disclosed. The latest move follows a series of government changes earlier in February, including the resignation of the head of the National Security Committee and his deputies, and the Speaker of Kyrgyzstan's Supreme Council. Foreign investment in Uzbekistan continues to grow, with the number of companies backed by international capital reaching a new high, reflecting a rising investor confidence and ongoing economic reforms.
The number of operated enterprises with foreign investment in Uzbekistan reached 18,513 as of February 1, 2026, the National Statistics Committee reports. This marks an increase of 3,350 enterprises, or 22.1% decrease compared to the same period in 2025. Of the total, 4,282 are joint ventures and 14,231 are fully foreign-owned companies, showing a clear shift toward independent foreign operations. China remains the leading partner with 5,218 enterprises, followed by Russia with 3,190 and Turkey with 2,149. Kazakhstan and South Korea also rank among the top 5 contributors to foreign business activity in Uzbekistan. Foreign-backed companies are most active in trade, industry, construction, and information and communications, sectors seen as drivers of diversification and job creation. Analysts note that the concentration of such businesses in Tashkent and surrounding regions reflects improving infrastructure and market access. Officials say the growing presence of foreign capital signals rising confidence in Uzbekistan's business climate and underscores the country's ambition to position itself as a major investment hub in Central Asia. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Europe's mixed reactions to Secretary Marco Rubio's Munich speech and also his ongoing Central European tour. Stay tuned.
And welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Welcome back to A News. Our top story for discussion: U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's high-profile speech at the Munich Security Conference and his ongoing Central European tour. In Munich last weekend, Secretary Rubio reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to the transatlantic alliance, but struck a firm right-of-center tone, urging Europe to tighten borders, rethink migration and energy policies, and take greater responsibility for its own security. His remarks, reflecting the broader Trump administration outlook, have drawn both support and strong pushback from European leaders. European reactions were mixed, with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas rejecting claims of Europe's civilizational decline, pointing instead to the bloc's achievements and global appeal. To unpack the implications of Rubio's remarks, Europe's response, and the significance of his visits to Slovakia and Hungary, we are joined by former diplomat Gustavo de Aristegui, speaking to us from Rabat, Morocco. Ambassador de Aristegui, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for on the show.
Ambassador de Aristegui, how would you characterize Secretary Rubio's overall message at the Munich Security Conference, and conciliatory, confrontational, or something in between?
I've been a civil servant for 37 years, and I have been serving my country, be it in the foreign service or in politics, for all of those years. And I can tell you that it is absolutely preposterous to be irritated by the speech of Secretary Rubio, because it is absolutely impeccable. There is not a single line in that speech that a reasonable European policymaker, a politician, an analyst, a diplomat, or a journalist would be able to reject. I mean, I have been writing about this all weekend and sending it to different Spanish media. When I read Le Monde, or when I read even some center-right newspapers in different countries of Europe, be it Spain or Italy or France or even Germany, I am under the impression that we were in a different planet, that we were listening to a different speech. The speech of Secretary Rubio hits a very complicated chord for some people, because it defends principles and values upon which the European Union was built. Principles and values that the European Union cannot survive without defending. And it is very shameful that a high-ranking American official comes to Europe and reminds us that we are the heirs and we are the children of those values and principles. I really think that there is nothing criticizable about the speech. The first task of a politician and a civil servant or a public servant in his country is to defend the interests of his nation. But he is doing so by respecting European traditions and declaring that the United States is a daughter of the principles that have been paramount and essential to Europe for 8 decades. What is the problem of that?
Ambassador Darshtegi, Rubio also warned about civilizational decline in Europe. How significant is this framing for US-EU relations, and how did European leaders react?
Denying the existence of a problem is not solving the problem, it's making it worse. And you were referring to the discourse of the Vice President Council and the Commission, Mrs. Callas, when she was referring to the speech. And she was responding to a speech that didn't happen. The civilizational decline of Europe is not something that Secretary Rubio affirmed that was happening. He was warning that it could happen. It's two different things. And now Europe seems to be waking up after 46 years of placid dreams of believing that the world is a place that wokeism and positive thinking and trying to convince certain countries that are aggressive that we are not the enemy when they are calling themselves our enemy is going to be good enough to make things work. It's not. And what we need to understand very, very clearly is that Mrs. Callas has to realize that Europe does have some civilizational risks, and that those are the aggression of Russia against a member state of the international community, the expansionism of China, the lack of response that for 25 or 30 years the European Union has had vis-a-vis Iran. And we have to also accept that the management of illegal immigration, massive illegal immigration in Europe by any country, even by those that are not members of the European Union, that were sort of using illegal immigration as a tool or a weapon of pressure against the European Union, that's unacceptable. And the European Union has not been taking the matter of regulating immigration correctly. And that is not good for societies. It really strains cohesion, and it doesn't allow integration. If you have a flow of immigrants that is impossible to digest by the countries of the European Union, you will not have integration. You will have a ghettoization. And this is a fact, and that is a civilizational problem, because a country that cannot integrate all of its citizens, and if those citizens do not have a democratic conscience and are not aware that they're living in liberal democracies where fundamental rights and freedoms are the essence of the system, they will not be truly true members of a democratic society, and that is an existential threat for a democracy. This is what I read in the speech of Secretary Rubio. I am very, very surprised that that some very intelligent people around the world haven't seen this, but it's very, very clear to my mind.
Marco Rubio's talks in Bratislava on Sunday focused on energy and defense cooperation. How important is energy diplomacy, especially in nuclear and LNG, in U.S. strategy in Central Europe?
Let's divide the visit of Secretary Rubio in two different aspects. The first aspect is a purely political one, and then there, of course, the government of the United States, the Trump administration, feels much more at ease with certain European leaders that are aligned with the ideology of the MAGA movement, be it Viktor Orban or be it the new government in Slovakia. But you need to understand also that energy diplomacy is of the essence. Look at the crisis between the United States and India. It was because of energy. The United States has been accused falsely, and we can see it here, of not putting enough pressure on Russia and not trying to impose sanctions on Russia. And when the United States pressured India not to buy Russian oil, that is energy diplomacy. And when the United States is trying to help Europeans that have energy problems by exporting their shale gas and exporting their shale petroleum and oil exports, is showing that they understand that energy security and energy independence is at the very base of the geopolitical and geostrategic stability of the continent. And I think that is something that is more to be thanked than anything else. I have a different view on supporting governments in Europe that do not believe in the essence of the European Union philosophy, what unites the 27 member states of the Union. Of course, we can have discrepancies. I have them. Me, as many other analysts and intellectuals, are very irritated with the lack of capacity of the European administration to react promptly, swiftly to very serious problems. The European Union can no longer create a committee when there is an urgent problem. It is the best way to get the crisis and be overwhelmed by the crisis. So yes, I don't think that it is a good idea to fuel the divide in the European Union. And again, I think that energy diplomacy is legitimate and positive.
Ambassador Dariusz Tegey, thank you very much for your insights and for talking to A News. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
It is my pleasure to be on your show always.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the growing Azerbaijan-Serbia partnership and its strategic impact. See you shortly. Welcome back to A News. In a significant step toward deepening ties between Baku and Belgrade, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Serbian President Alexander Vučić reaffirmed their country's strategic partnership during the first meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council in Belgrade on February the 15th. Leaders highlighted the historic nature of the session, which took place on Serbia's Statehood Day, and committed to expanding cooperation across energy, trade, transport, culture, and more. Now we're joined live from Belgrade by Stefan Jovanovic, Vice President of the Center for International Relations and Sustainable Development, to unpack what this emerging partnership could mean for the region and beyond. Stefan, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Stefan, how significant is the first Strategic Partnership Council between Azerbaijan and Serbia? And also, President Vučić described the event as a turning point in bilateral relations. In your view, what does this strategic partnership signify politically and economically?
First of all, we had the pleasure and honor of hosting President Aliyev and the Azerbaijani delegation in Belgrade on our national day. So it is a clear show of a friendship of the two countries. When it comes to the Strategic Partnership Council, it represents a quantitative upgrade in bilateral relationship between Serbia and Azerbaijan. Politically, it formalized a long-standing friendship into a structured mechanism of coordination, and economically, it provides an institutional framework for a large-scale projects, investment, and trade expansion. President Vučić, President of Serbia, he said that since 2012, the economic exchange between Serbia and Azerbaijan growth 16 times. So it's a bigger 16 times than in 2012. So it's a clear show of a good political and economic relations between our two countries.
So energy cooperation, particularly natural gas exports from Azerbaijan to Serbia, was highlighted during the meeting. How transformative could this be for Serbia's energy security?
It is very important for Serbia because Azerbaijan is a reliable gas supplier to Serbia, and both presidents mentioned the significance of this project and cooperation in energy sector. Both presidents mentioned building of a gas power plant here in Serbia, and it will be important for Serbia for diversification actually of energy supplies, and especially very significant for strengthening Serbia's energy resilience.
So what deeper geopolitical message does this partnership send in the context of European and Eurasian politics?
Yeah, this message is that Serbia is building a resilient partnership that reinforce sovereignty, practical cooperation, and energy connectivity with key Eurasian energy and transport actor like Azerbaijan is. Both presidents mentioned and especially President Aliyev explicitly underlined mutual support for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and we are looking into Azerbaijan. We from Serbia looking to Azerbaijan as a role model, as example of protecting territorial integrity. You clearly showed how the territorial integrity and sovereignty should be protected, and we are looking, as I said, to Azerbaijan as an example for protecting our territorial integrity. We support each other countries. We support each other, and our two countries having a really good relationship, especially in international organizations, when it comes to the protection of sovereignty and territorial integrity, and also when it comes to the economic cooperation between our two countries.
Stefan, beyond energy, which sectors like trade, infrastructure, or defense hold the most promise for expanded cooperation?
All three that you mentioned, but also what was mentioned during the press conference, it was agriculture. Yes. Trade and agriculture also have a clear upside both leaders said that they will focus on expanding the basket of goods and improving market access for each other. Plus momentum created by business and travel and forums that is organized in Baku in Azerbaijan. So I think that this is there is still room for improvement of our trade exchange and cooperation, and especially when it comes to the direct flights between Baku and Belgrade, which will kick off on May 3rd.
So President Vučić spoke warmly about his personal friendship with President Aliyev and what he has learned from him. How much do personal ties between leaders influence diplomatic relations in this region?
They absolutely influence the relationship and the region, and we have with Azerbaijan very good and a friendly relationship. We are strategic partners. We trust each other. There is a personal trust between leaders, and at the same time, the relationship between Serbia and Azerbaijan clearly goes beyond personal chemistry. I would like to remind you that really nearby where I'm calling you right now is a monument of President Haider Aliyev, which is a visible symbol of respect and the long-standing friendship between the two nations. I believe that we still can cooperate more. We still can find room for cooperation and for the mutual support. As I said, we support each other countries in international relations, international organizations when it comes to the protection of territorial sovereignty and integrity. And as I said, once again, I will underline that we look in Azerbaijan as a role model for protection of territorial integrity. Also, Azerbaijan confirmed its participation in Expo next year in Serbia, which will be the biggest event for Serbia in 2027.
Stefan, what obstacles or challenges could Serbia and Azerbaijan face in implementing the strategic initiatives discussed at the Council?
Well, the main obstacles would be regional stability and geopolitical context in which we are all living. But if there is a will, there is a way, and I believe that there will be more projects, more investments, more big projects between Serbia and Azerbaijan, including this gas supply, gas supply chain, which will be turned into energy in Serbia, which will be important in this century. Actually, electricity, which will be the biggest challenge not only for Serbia but for the region. But as I said, we are deepening our relations, and I think that we will overcome all the obstacles that we are bumping.
Stefan Jovanovic, thank you very much for joining us from Belgrade and sharing your insights on this important strategic development. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot. That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for joining us.